Going on, Fourth and Inches podcast listeners? You got Dan, Kevin, Stevie P coming at you. What's going on, fellas?
What's going on, everybody?
What's up? Good evening, guys.
All right, so today we're going to get into some news. But first, don't forget to check out the website at www.fourthandinchesff.com as www.4thnInchesSFF.com for a bunch of content. You got articles, blogs, player profiles, and you can subscribe to our draft guide, which features the decision maker, which is a tiered out guideline for 3 different drafting styles. You got one for your risky drafter, your conservative drafter, and you got the tweener, which is basically a mix of both. The draft guide also features the cheat codes down of every team's stats from last year. It is a great tool to prepare for your drafts, and it's the same tool we use to give you information on the podcast. So check that out, and also look for us on the Fantasy Life app. We'll be doing start-sit questions throughout the year, and we are looking into doing a keeper questions segment before the year starts on there as well. We actually got to get on that because that new year is coming. And if you're listening, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating. And don't be afraid to drop some comments in there too, guys, and give us some feedback on, things we can improve on, things you like about the podcast. Hit us up and give us a little bit of feedback too. So with that being said, let's get into the news for today.
Ladies and gentlemen, can I please have your attention? I've just been handed an urgent and horrifying news story. And I need all of you to stop what you're doing and listen.
All right. So, first and foremost, Tom Brady signed a 3-year extension. This guy's going to play forever. Tom Brady is, not a guy being drafted, really too high this year. So, we're not going to get into Brady too much. You kind of know what he is. D'Onta Foreman was released by the Texans. Today, he was actually picked up by the Colts. This, I think, is a little bit relevant for fantasy. What do you think this does to Lamar Miller's stock?
I definitely think it's going to go up, but I don't fucking want Lamar Miller on my fantasy team. It's just, I'm hoping that by the time he starts to go, I already have my running backs at that point, that I don't need him. If I get him as a flex or a bench player, I'd be more happy. But, I don't think it really changes that he is not a very good fantasy producer. I think he's a better real NFL player than he is a fantasy player. And I just don't want him on my fantasy team.
Yeah, I'm kind of in agreement. None of us are really high on Lamar Miller. I do think that he does benefit. We all are high on the Texans being a very powerful offense, making big, winning games, maybe by blowouts. And if they're going to score, they're not going to do everything by air. So they're going to have somebody score some running touchdowns. And him being the solid number 1 right now, with not even a guy really pushing to take the job like we all thought Foreman could, it's definitely going to be much more relevant for fantasy owners of Lamar Miller.
Yeah, I'm really curious what the Texans are doing at their running back position. Obviously they must love Lamar Miller because he's been very, very average at best, and he's making a lot of money, and they have nobody else behind him. That we really know of. I know they got Tywan Jones there. He was more seemed like a scat back from the Raiders. So, like I said, nobody that's really threatening Lamar Miller for a job. And today they actually said they weren't interested in trading for Melvin Gordon. So, who knows what they're doing there. But as far as Lamar Miller is concerned, his stock can go up. All that does is clear things up for me because it's one less spot I got to worry about a guy actually taking a pick that I want to make. As far as Foreman, he's just competing for that backup job with Jonathan Wilkins. This isn't hitting Marlon Mack.
Nah, yeah, I think they just, I think with Jordan Wilkins' play last year, he actually didn't play too bad, but I think they just felt like, some competition behind Mack. If Mack were to go down, I think would be, better. So, I guess we'll see. How that pans out. But obviously the Colts are going to have to cut somebody. Somebody's got to go. it's just too many running backs in that backfield now. You know, Spencer Ware already asked for his release and all that, so you know we'll see who else gets cut from that team.
Yeah,
I mean,
Hines and Mack are already solidified in their roles, I think. So
I don't know if Foreman's even relative right now in fantasy until you actually see what they put out for the 53-man roster. I mean, maybe they're taking a flyer on him, and the reason that we were a little bit high on Foreman is because we thought that he had potential to possibly make a push for that starting job in Houston with Lamar Miller's bad performances last year, but this isn't going to be the case in Indy. They're definitely they're set they're set with Max. So right now it's just to give them some depth. Maybe like you said, have a little competition in the backup role.
all right, so of course we know about the Damian Williams hamstring. Andy Reid discussing this supposedly sounded a little frustrated. We get our news off the Fantasy Life our Fantasy Life news wire. So, that's how I'm basically giving you the news. So they were saying that Andy Reid sounded a little frustrated when talking about Damian Williams. And at the same time, he also was, saying that Carlos Hyde looked really good in, picking up the slack for Williams' injury.
I think he's got to say something positive either way. He can't just be like, David, be out there with a slouchy personality and then say like, well, we're fucked. Like.
My thing with Andy Reid though is that Andy Reid is always more of a truth teller. He doesn't bullshit you. He kind of gives it to you straight. And when you got a guy like Damian Williams who has never really showed that he can be that guy, and then Carlos Hyde, who is at one point a first-round fantasy pick, so you can show that he has talent and can be a good player in the NFL. I could definitely see how Carlos Hyde might creep up into Damian Williams' work once Damian Williams is healthy.
Yeah, Ken, we only really heard one sentence out of Andy Reid for 15 years in Philly, which was, "I got to do a better job." So I mean, I don't know what to really read from Andy Reid when he talks, because basically all we know is he's got to do a better job.
Exactly. Yeah. For me, it's still a wait and see. I think the news is going to just literally these fucking guys just get paid to throw shit out there. And I know what Andy Reid said today. I read it too, but to me it was just a coach that's frustrated that wants his guy out there. You know what I mean? I didn't read any more really into it than that. A guy who's frustrated and wants to, get his starting running back out there for practice. So, I'm not going to read anything further into it until, a week or two down the road that he's still not practicing. Then I'll be worried about it. But right now, I just think he's the most talented guy that they have in that backfield right now, and they're gonna ride him like he said.
All right. DK Metcalf was hurt the other day. What did he injure? He was held out of practice after suffering a strained oblique.
He practiced today.
Did he practice today?
Yeah, and he's expected to play Thursday in the preseason game. So I think that, I don't know what speed he was at today, but they're pretty much, I think they're just giving him the green light.
Yeah, I actually was watching NFL Network a little bit ago. I seen him out there running routes and catching balls and going deep. So it didn't look.
All right. Pete Carroll says Chris Carson still looks like the best running back in camp. No, I'm sorry, not Pete Carroll. According to Michael Sean Dugar of The Athletic, Chris Carson continues to look like the best running back on the Seahawks roster. I don't think there's anything we don't know already. So let's get into some stuff from today. Cardinals signed Michael Crabtree. Any interest in Crabtree?
It depends on. For me, it depends on if he starts running with the runs, within the next week or so. If he starts running with, Larry Fitz and all those guys, in as the number 2 wide receiver, then yeah, I definitely would have some interest in Michael Crabtree. To me, that just kind of lets me know that, maybe they think either Fitz is slowing down or they want to get some competition in there. I don't know exactly what that signing did, because we all know Christian Kirk, is a good receiver. You know, Andy Isabella injury maybe. I don't know exactly how what's going on, but I guess we'll just have to see.
I think it's the offense just runs with more 4 wide receiver sets. So if you're able to put Kirk and Isabella in the slot and then put Fitz and Crabtree on the outside, I mean, Crabtree he's still a good receiver. Even last year, he was in Baltimore. He had Lamar Jackson, and we've talked about what his passing was last year. Still got 100 targets, in the season. So to me, if Crabtree is still in shape, he's probably going to be a very solid option outside of on the outside, while they have Fitzgerald on the outside and Kirk and Isabella on the slot, which are 2 quick receivers, which is what this offense is made of. I really like this signing. I don't know how good it'll be for fantasy or for his numbers, but I definitely think it adds another weapon to that arsenal. It probably works out better for Kyler Murray than anyone to me.
Yeah, I mean, and really thinking about it, I guess the biggest person that it affects is Hakeem Butler. I mean, I think that kind of shows how happy they are with his progression. I think that they don't think he's anywhere close to being an NFL player right now, and maybe he needs to progress. So they said, you know what, we'll bring in Crabtree, and maybe he can help the young kid out. But other than that, we'll, like you said, I don't think Crabtree is really all that relevant unless we find out in camp he is definitely going to be the number 2, guy running a lot of routes.
Yeah, I don't really know what to make out of this signing right now, because I mean, I had Crabtree last year, and he actually wasn't horrible. I mean, he was in that area where I wanted to start him because he was putting together games here or there, but he never had those monster games, and that's kind of been like Crabtree's career. I mean, he shines at times, but I just think he's been dealt a shitty card. He really hasn't had like a quarterback that he's ever had a rapport with, except maybe his rookie season. Or was he in San Fran's rookie season? So, yeah. And so I mean, just he's been slightly above average. So I don't know if they're bringing him in, like you guys said, to help out with the young guys, to give the young guys a push in the ass, saying like, this is competition. Let's try to play up to it. So definitely a wait and see on that. But I think it's a good fit. I mean, the more veteran presence you can put around a young quarterback, definitely the better.
Boston Sports Journal's Greg Bedard reports wide receiver Jacoby Myers is Tom Brady's favorite target among Patriots receivers. I don't think this is relevant at all. We know Julian Edelman is going to be his favorite target when he's healthy.
And Julian Edelman's probably sitting there chugging Gatorade and walking up and down the sideline. So Brady's throwing this to 4s and 5s, today, because obviously, I mean, that's just news, like we were saying. They're reaching for something.
The Athletic's Jeff Howe reports Sony Michel is beating man coverage and finding soft spots in zones as a pass catcher at Patriots camp. Steve, how do you feel?
How do I feel? I still am not high on Sony. I just nothing that's going to come out of camp is going to change my mind that I think Sony is is going to be the bell cow there. I just don't think you sign a 3rd round rookie to sit the bench. You know what I mean? So, and to me, he's not going to be taking away from James White. So to me, it doesn't change anything. I just, I think if you are high on Sony, that news made you happy. And if you're not high on Sony, then it really didn't do anything for you.
Yeah, Sony Michel, last year he was on the field. I think they said for like 65% of the offensive plays. And obviously, White was on there for 30 or so. But do you know how many targets Sony Michel had last year? Take a guess how many targets Sony Michel had.
It was like, I know it was like something ridiculous. It was like 8 or something ridiculous.
11.
Yeah, I know, something ridiculous.
11 targets. That's almost impossible. That means you literally have no idea how to move out of the backfield and check down or create any kind of, open lane for yourself in the passing game. I mean, that's just. I mean, I'm sure that third downs they're bringing James White in every single play, but you got to have some kind of disguise. That is so one dimensional. To me, that's why Sony Michel is not even close to my radar. I mean, we saw for years that Adrian Peterson was pretty much the most one-dimensional player in the NFL, running back in the NFL, but the guy was putting up 2,000-yard seasons. So, and 15 touchdowns, you didn't need him to catch the ball. He was putting up more, way bigger stats than any two-dimensional running back in the league. But, yeah, I mean, Sony's got to give you more than that. So, I mean, with 11 targets, I don't care if he's catching every ball out of the backfield all preseason. He's still not. It's not going to translate to the game, and James White is not coming off the field on third downs because the dude gets 120 targets.
NJ.com reports Miles Sanders has easily been the most impressive runner through Eagles' first 10 training camp practices. Dan, go ahead.
I saw him today. Field pass on the Eagles. And I texted you guys while I was there, and I said that I'll give you exactly what I said in text. I said that, you can't gauge what kind of. I mean, I saw Sudfeld throwing the ball as hard as you can, trying to throw darts. You can't gauge what the ball looks like coming out of Carson's hands unless you're physically 20, 30 feet from him, because it is as impressive and ridiculous as anything I've ever seen. As far as some of the other guys, I saw Aguilar drop a couple balls in the end zone. Deshaun Jackson he looked like he was running half speed and still faster than everybody else out there. JJ dropped one and caught one on some out routes in the end zone. They were using his size. Jordan Howard looked pretty big and slow. And then Miles Sanders was getting a ton of work, and rightfully so. He looked like he was ready to explode game one. I mean, they looked like they could hand him the ball 30 times a game and he would be fine. He was incredible. I didn't see a whole lot of Alshon. Alshon was just kind of like walking up and down the sidelines. He wasn't hurt. He was just laughing with guys. I don't know if he played, went hard last night's practice and just needed a breather because it was 80-some degrees, 85 degrees up. But that was my takeaway of training camp for the Eagles today.
All right. Skip over that one. We don't need to talk about that one. The Athletics' Mark Kabali reports that Jalen Samuels has seen a significant part of the offense so far in Steelers camp. None of us have been very high on James Conner, and if this is an indication of what could come, I think we'll be still enjoying and we'll be liking how we're all feeling about James Conner, because there's a lot of people that are high on him, and we are not those people. Chicago Tribune considers Trey Burton unlikely to play in the preseason. This has no real effect on Trey Burton, on fantasy. I mean, Trey Burton's a guy going in later rounds, and, he's kind of a dart throw tight end, and if he's not playing in the preseason, maybe he's less likely to wind up on your team. So, with that being said, we are going to get into our exercise for the night. We are each going to pick five guys that we think will blow up, and 5 guys that we think might be being drafted too high and could be busts. And if we have guys on opposite ends of the spectrum, we are going to stop the program and debate it on the spot. So, with that being the case, let's start it. All right. So, so this is how we'll do it. We'll give one guy we're on, one guy we like, one guy we don't like, and move to the next guy. Dan, I'll start with you. Give me one guy you like, one guy you don't like.
All right, let me grab. I'll start with the guy I like. We talked about him. I don't know if it was the last podcast or a podcast before that, but we got Leonard Fournette. I'm really huge on him this year. I think he definitely goes back to that, first round production, but you're getting him in the third round draft spot. So I'm huge on Leonard Fournette this year. I think that Jacksonville not having really any receiving core is, we don't know what DD's going to be. I mean, they're big on him, but he's a young guy. So I mean, there's no veterans on that team. The defense is super, super highly rated. And I think they're just going to be a ground and pound offense. So that's my one guy that I like, and one guy that I don't like, I will go with. I've got my list here. Adam Thielen. We'll start with him because I know we got a debate coming up soon, but we'll get a couple words out. So we'll go with Adam Thielen. It's no surprise that I picked him. I'm much bigger on Diggs this year. Loved the way that Thielen started, especially since Kirk Cousins was my quarterback last year. I love the way Thielen started the season, but I was not. He basically showed his true colors and came back down to earth and played like a average receiver at the end of the middle to end of the year. And because he started so good, his draft spot is inflated. And I think that I think his counterpart Diggs is a better talent. So those are my two guys.
All right, Steve, go ahead next.
All right, so first guy that I liked, I'm gonna go with Cam Newton. For me, Cam Newton is going in round 9, which to me is stealing. You know what I mean? When Cam Newton plays all 16 games, he is basically a top 5 or 6 quarterback every single year. He's finished the number 1 quarterback. He has the best weapons he's ever had as a passer. You know what I mean? This year, he's got Christian McCaffrey, who is probably top 2 most dangerous player out of the backfield in the whole league. I think that Greg Olsen, from everything that everybody's been saying, that he looks, rejuvenated after basically, down past 2 years. He went, I think it was like 5 years without an injury, and then the past 2 years, that broken foot has just been really fucking with him. But, I think if he can stay healthy and this offense, continues to be healthy this year, the sky's the limit for what Cam could end up doing this year. He could end up being a top 3 fantasy quarterback, and you're getting him as like the 9th or 10th quarterback drafted. I've seen him drop as low as to round 11. In our draft actually I did today on Yahoo, he went in the 11th round, which I thought was insane. But Cam is Cam. Cam is going to do his thing. Before he got hurt last year, before week 11, and he got hit by TJ Watt, he was playing awesome. He was playing really well, and he was a top 3 guy. So I love Cam. The guy that I dislike, I'm going to go with Eric Ebron as my first. He's my number 5. Eric Ebron he's the 9th quarterback. The 8th tight end off the board. He's going off the board in round 7. I don't know. For me, that's way too early for Eric Ebron. There's 4 or 5 tight ends I'd rather have over Eric Ebron. Honestly, Eric Ebron is not even in my top 12 anymore. I actually moved him out of my top 12. With a healthy Jack Doyle, I just don't see how Eric Ebron, puts up anywhere close to what he had last year. And, not a guy that I'm drafting on any of my teams, really. I think if you take Eric Ebron as the, he's going anywhere from 6 to 8. He's basically from the 6th tight end taken off the board to the 8th tight end taken off the board. And, the range, if you look at Fantasy Football Calculator, they actually give you a range on where they're going, like at the high end and at the low end. At the high end, the dude is going in the 4th round. He's been drafted this week in the 4th round by somebody. And then his low end is round 11. So, I agree with the round 11 assessment, and I'm just not taking him.
All right, so my first guy that I like is Carson Wentz. Currently going at the first pick in the 8th round is where Carson Wentz is being drafted. If you guys remember 2 years ago, Carson Wentz was the MVP of the league. He literally was tearing it up at the end of week 12. He got hurt in week 13. Through week 12, he was the number 2 overall quarterback at that point. Guys easily has top 5 upside if he stays healthy. And that's what you're kind of looking for in this and that's what we're really talking about in this segment is, guys who have that upside to blow up and help your team win fantasy games. And Carson Wentz in the 8th round as the, let's see, what number quarterback? As the 8th quarterback being taken, I like him more than Drew Brees, who's going before him. I like him more than Matt Ryan, who's going before him. I like him more than Baker Mayfield, who's going before him. And I believe I like him more than Aaron Rodgers this year. He's got the best receivers, best weapons on the outside that he's ever had. He's never had weapons like this. He's got, to me, a better running game behind him. I like Jordan Howard and Miles Sanders, better than what I liked LeGarrette Blount and Jay Ajayi. For me, Carson Wentz has the ability to win people a bunch of fantasy leagues this year, going in the 8th round. And a guy I do not like, I'm just going to piggyback off you guys so that we can keep it simple. Eric Ebron, same exact reason. To me, Eric Ebron is a candidate for an extreme regression. He had an unbelievable amount of touchdowns last year that I don't think he will be able to repeat. He's going in at the 6th, I believe the 12th picks in the 6th round it is. No, I'm sorry. He's 4th pick in the 7th round, so I'm a little behind there. 4th pick in the 7th round. He's the 8th tight end being taken. And like Steve, I actually have him at number 13 overall, and I like Jack Doyle more than him, who's on his own team and not even being drafted in most leagues. So, yeah, Eric Ebron is definitely not going to be on my team, and a guy I think is an extreme bust.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just touch real quick on the Ebron thing. I know Steve ran off a whole bunch of stats when we talked about him in depth a little bit ago, but I read it. They mentioned it today that when him and Jack Doyle were on the team together playing, he had less than half the targets that he was getting after Jack Doyle went down. Less than half, and I think they said it through before that Doyle got hurt, he had something like 8 or 9 catches. I mean, the guy really got zero love from Luck until Doyle went down. So I mean, who's to say that when it didn't pan out the beginning of the season when they were both in there? Why is it all? I mean, just because they built a rapport when Jack Doyle got hurt, does that mean that it's going to carry over? I mean, I guess we'll see. But I'm with you guys too on that. I'm just, the more I look at that combination, the more I'm not a big fan. But moving on to my second player, I'm going to go with the Super Bowl MVP, Julian Edelman. Really, not a lot needs to be said about Edelman, and he's not. Yeah, he got hurt 2 years ago, which crushed a lot. Crushed a lot of his stats for his career because he was just super consistent, and then he obviously missed the first 4 games last year, and he was dropping. But when this dude plays, he is a target machine. I mean, he is 12, 13 targets for Edelman is a very, very low game. I mean, he's constantly out there. It seems like just always making plays, and I think he's going to be the by far Brady's number one guy to go to, and I think he's going to outperform his ADP. He's going to have a really good year if he stays healthy. Somebody that I am down on is I'm going to go with I got two players on this team, so I'll start with a quarterback, and I'm going to go with Patrick Mahomes. And I'm not down on him as a player in any way. I'm just, if it's going strictly off of where they're being drafted, I think 3rd round for a second-year player is just too much for me. We talk about how the range from in quarterbacks from 1st to even like 10th is nowhere close in stats as it is from 1st to 10th in running backs or receivers. You're getting him in the 3rd round. You got somebody else going in the 8th round, and they're significantly closer in stats at the end of the year than your 3rd round running back and your 8th round running back. So for me, I think Patrick Mahomes does have a great year. I don't think he has as good of a year as last year. That's really hard to duplicate. So, but just based on draft position, I think you can get a better value in that 3rd round.
Nice, Steve.
So my second set of guys is, sorry about that, my phone closed on me, but Kiki QT is my next guy. For me, Kiki is I don't know how to. He is just one of those dudes that is going really late. He's going as late as round 11, and I don't think people realized how good he was last year when he played. He was hurt a lot. You know what I mean? When you look at his stats from last year, he missed a bunch of games. So, he missed week 17, 16, 15, 14, 13. He missed whatever, those 5 games in a row. He got hurt in the Tennessee game. He only played, I think, the first quarter. Then he got hurt. He was out. But against Washington, he had a 5 for 77 game. Then he missed the 2 games prior to that. Then against Jacksonville, he had a 1 for 3 game. That was his worst game of the season. And against Buffalo, who was the best pass defense in football last year, he was 3 for 33. But then he played against Indy. He was 11 for 109 with 15 targets in that game. The very next week against Dallas, which was another good passing, defense, he was 6 for 51 and a touchdown in that game. He had 17.3 fantasy points in a PPR league. To me, Keke Coutee is a guy that is being extremely undervalued, and I understand the injuries scare people or whatever, but if this dude plays all 16 games, he has 100 catch upside. He really does. Playing in this offense with a quarterback that does get the ball out of his hands quickly when he sees a guy open. It's not like, Watson is, we all have him as a top 3, quarterback this year. I've been saying this for weeks now. I think all 3 of these receivers are top 24 viable. And for a guy that you're getting in the 11th round, I think that could be, especially if you're hurting at wide receiver, I would definitely even pull him in the 10th round if I could. Just to get him, when the fire is hot, you know what I mean? Because guess what? In the preseason, if he's running around catching balls, looking good, he's going to start moving up your rank. He's going to start moving up the ADP boards. So, definitely a guy that I want on my fantasy team because, I don't see him being drafted before round 9. So I love Keke this year. The guy that I am down on is Devontae Freeman. He's my number 4. Devontae, just the injuries are just the past 2 seasons he's just been really banged up. This offensive line, they signed 2 rookies, which I know everybody is like, oh, that's going to really, really improve this offensive line, but I don't know that yet. Matt Ryan is he's another guy that I have on this list, but and I'll get to him when I get to him, but I think that Devontae Freeman has a chance of being very limited, a lot more limited than people are giving him credit. I think people are assuming he's going to come back and be the guy he was 3 years ago, and I don't think that's the case at all. I definitely think that it's going to be a running back by committee in that system. I don't think that they think that Devontae can carry a workload the way that I think some fantasy analysts are pumping him up to, and he just makes me super nervous. And he's going in the 3rd round, and I'm not taking him in the 3rd round period. I mean, if he drops to the 5th round, I might think about him, but if he in the 3rd round, there's no way. So,
all right. So next guy on my list, I should say, of guys I like, is Mark Ingram.
And I'm going to stop you right there because Mark Ingram is actually on my list of guys that I'm not so high on. So,
we got a debate.
Let's get ready to rumble!
I guess we got to it's Kev's turn, so we got to let him speak his piece, and then I will come back with my retorts.
Yeah, we'll start with the guys. If we have a debate, we'll start with the person who likes, and then the person who dislikes can follow.
Round 1, fight!
All right, so my feeling on Mark Ingram is this. The Ravens last year ran the ball 547 times. They had a 50-50 run-pass ratio. Probably the only team in the NFL to do that in this day and age because this is such a passing league. Everybody's way more pass-oriented. This team was 50-50 last year with Lamar Jackson. So if you take away 200 of those 547 carries and give them to Lamar Jackson, 200 I feel like is a high number as well. So I'm giving the high number. You still have 347 carries to distribute to a guy that they just signed in the first round, or a guy that they just signed off of the Saints, and a guy that they drafted, I believe Justice Hill was in the 5th round, 4th round, somewhere around there. What, 3? 4th? Yeah, so Justice Hill got drafted in the 4th round. Now, yeah, they still got Gus Edwards there. To me, I don't think Gus Edwards is nearly the talent that Mark Ingram is. So let's go back to last season. From week 11 to 16, Gus Edwards, that's when Gus Edwards took over the job. Lamar Jackson was his quarterback. In PPR leagues, Gus Edwards was the number 18 running back during that time. This is with 0 passing production, all right? Gus Edwards had nothing in the pass game and was still finishing number 18 in PPR leagues during that time. He also only scored 2 touchdowns in that time because he was not their goal line back. They used Buck Allen in their goal line situations because they were a little bit fearful of Gus Edwards being, a younger player and having fumbling issues. So they went with Buck Allen. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think they're going to, them using a receiving back or more of a scat back in the red zone. I think Mark Ingram is going to be their red zone back because he can actually give them a receiving option and also gives them, veteran reliability when it comes to fumbles. So I think that Mark Ingram is going to take over those red zone carries. Gus Edwards last year averaged 5.3 yards per carry, and Mark Ingram, while that's an insane, that's a really good yards per carry average. Mark Ingram himself averaged 4.7 yards per carry. So it's not like you're getting a huge dip in your yards per carry average there. Mark Ingram was, coming out of Alabama, a much more talented player. I understand he's older now, but during the time last year where Gus Edwards was number 18, Mark Ingram, as the number 2 running back on his team, was number 21 in PPR. To me, I think it's no question. I think Mark Ingram has bottom number 1 running back upside, especially in this offense. It's going to be so run dominant, and they didn't just sign him to sit him on the bench and do nothing with him.
Round 2, fight.
Yeah, there's no doubt that they're going to be a 500-yard or 500 carry team again. I mean, I think that I agree with you with, but there's 4 running backs on this team. There's 4 that are going to see carries this year, including Lamar Jackson. He's going to see 200 possible carries, if not more. If he plays the full 16, the way Steve broke it down in his blog, that 14 carries times 16 games is actually over 200 carries. I think Justice Hill sees 100 carries because I think he's going to show that much potential this year. I mean, now you're looking at about 225 to 250 carries for Mark Ingram, which is about what he handled during during his career when he was the steady primary back. The last couple of years, he's been splitting carries with Alvin Kamara. I mean, we're talking about a guy who's in his 9th season now who took a less workload over the last couple seasons. I mean, I get that he's the number 1 back, that this is going to be a run-heavy offense, but as soon as Justice Hill or even Gus Edwards, who had an incredible, end of the season last year, shows any kind of progression in their run game, they're not going to stick with a 32, 33-year-old Mark Ingram, wherever he is, 30, even 31. I mean, the average lifespan of a running back in the NFL is 4 to 5 years. He's going into his 9th year. Plus, he played all 4 years as a starter at Alabama. So, to me, he does have touchdown upside, but he does not, he's not going to be the yards guy. And, people are drafting him very high because of the system that he's in. I mean, people are basically looking at the system and saying that this worked last year for Gus Edwards, like you put out. I mean, if it worked for Gus Edwards, it can work for anybody. But to me, there's so much other talent around him that, he's not going to be the ball hog the bell cow that people might think that he is. I think there's just too much wear and tear on him. I think that he's going to fade as the season comes on, and some of these young guys are going to come in and they're going to swipe up his carries. So, I mean, if this guy gets 200 carries and 50 balls, 50 catches, I think that's going to put him at a RB 12, and definitely not where he's getting drafted at.
So let me ask you this: how many carries do you think he gets?
I think he gets 175 to 200.
All right, so 175 to 200. If he winds up getting 180 carries at 4.7 yards per carry, which was his, I'm going off his yards per carry, not Gus Edwards' yards per carry, which was better because the offense is more suited towards the run game. So I'll use his yards per carry last year. Like, that's still over 900 yards, and he's going to get a lot more receiving work.
I think it's eight and change. That's where I think he's going to end up. I mean, I think he's going to. I don't see him cracking 1,000 yards. I think he's going to be in the 8 and change. I think he's going to be in the 7 to 8 total touchdown range and some catches, which is a good season. I think he's going to have a good season, like he's had good seasons in New Orleans. But he's going. I mean, he's strictly going from, he was drafted the last couple of years. Obviously because Kamara was by far the guy that outperformed him, but he was drafted the last couple of years and 7th, 8th round, and now he's jumped up to the 3rd, 4th round strictly because
last year he was missing 4 games and still going in like the 6th round.
All right, guys. So I'm going to let you guys give me 1 minute of final argument of why I should pick you to win this debate, because I think it's a little bit closer than I thought it would be. And it's not just because Dan was saying about the age. I do agree with Dan about the running backs here. I think, Lamar Jackson is going to get at least, I think, around 200 carries. I think, Hill is going to get some carries. I do think Gus Bus is going to get some carries. So I do think everyone in this backfield is going to be touching the ball. So 1 minute on why you guys, think you should win this debate.
All right. So first off, I think that, the touchdowns from last year and this year aren't even going to be close. I think that he's going to score more touchdowns this year than when I'm actually doing his projections, I'm only giving him credit for like 7 touchdowns. He scored 6 last year in 12 games. And like I said, last year, between Buck Allen and Gus Edwards, he scored like I think 5 or something like that. I think, I'm sorry. I think it was 9. So I'm giving him the touchdown. I'm giving him less touchdowns than what I think is going to be credited for. And like I said, this team is just geared towards running the ball. And I don't think they brought Mark Ingram in there to give Gus Edwards, 5, 6, 7, 12 carries, 10 carries a game. That's my.
All right, Dan,
so
your
here's the bottom line. Here's where it's going to come down to it. Is basically this guy is going just a little bit behind your names like Mack and Fournette, who are going to.
I mean, he's going like a
half a round to a round, depending on where you're at.
He's in like the Phillip Lindsay area.
Don't get me started on Phillip Lindsay. We'll bash him later.
That's where he's being drafted. I mean, he's being drafted in the area of David Montgomery, Phillip Lindsay, James White, Derrick Henry. Like, that's all the running backs in the fourth.
Derrick Henry was the other one I wanted to mention.
All right, Dan, real quick, guys. We got to get back on topic. So why should you win this debate?
First of all, I'm better looking. So
debate in itself.
All right, so back to Ingram. Basically, it just comes down to is he going to produce at the round that he's being drafted in? And I think that if he even holds the starting role, because I think that Justice Hill at some point is going to make a run at it, and there's just too much wear and tear on his body that he's not going to 800 yards and 8 carries to me, and 8 touchdowns is his high upside, not his low upside. And I want a guy that's going to be that. If I'm drafting a guy as my RB2, I want a guy with 800 yards and 8 touchdowns as his low upside, not his high upside.
All right, so I have made my decision, and it was actually the 1 minute that Kev got that gave him this. So I looked up while he was saying it. And if you look at the numbers, Alex Collins had 8 touchdowns on this team. Alex Collins only played 7 games with this team. So while he was the bell cow, he had 8 touchdowns. If you look at the other 2 guys that he was talking about, you look at Kenneth Dixon, Gus Edwards. I did all 3. Kenneth Dixon, Gus Edwards, and Javoris Allen. They scored 9 touchdowns between the 3 of them. So if Mark Ingram was brought in to be that goal line back like Alex Collins was before they stopped using him, his touchdowns are going to be the difference, and I do think he gets double digits. So that one goes to Kev.
I don't agree with it, but I like your facts.
All right, so I'll get back to the next guy that I don't like. All right, so the next guy I don't like, I'm going to piggyback off Dan, believe it or not, and go with Adam Thielen. Adam Thielen is a guy we talked about last year, or talked about, a lot, at least during the wide receiver podcast, during the when we did the AFC North podcast. To me, this team is just going to be so much more geared toward running the football. Mike Zimmer wants it that way. That's why DeFilippo was fired. So I think Dalvin Cook is going to be – if the offense is going to run through Dalvin Cook this year, they're probably going to use Kirk Cousins a little bit more as a game manager, which I think he would really excel in. And to me, you look at the end of that year when the offense changed, Stephon Diggs became more of the target in the offense behind Thielen. He actually had 2 more targets over the last half of the season, and that was with missing 1 game while Thielen played all of them. So, to me, I think Thielen is due for extreme regression. He's the first pick in the 3rd round, and to me, he should be going in the 4th round easily because, I like Julian Edelman better than him. I like T.Y. Hilton better than him. I like Stephon Diggs on his own team better than him. All guys getting drafted later than him. I think Adam Thielen is a guy that could really let you down this year.
All right. So you want to go with your next 2, Dan?
I'll
Or
just go with
actually,
one.
what are
Yeah,
we
since
on?
we debated on the one that I was low on, we'll go with someone that I'm high on. And it's me and Kev got a lot of guys on the same list. I swear we didn't talk about this beforehand, but Carson Wentz, and it's just the huge upside. The only reason this guy is going in round 8 is because of his potential injury history. And Steve, he's the first one to say you can't grade guys on their past injuries. You can only grade them on their performances. And when he's out there, he performs as good, if not better, than just about every quarterback out there. Obviously Mahomes had a monster season last year. Luck's going to be in the conversation because seems like he's back to full swing. But Carson Wentz, with the talent around him, he can absolutely win MVP. Not just this year, but every year he's on the field playing 16. I mean, he puts this Eagles team in a position to be Super Bowl contenders every year. I mean, it's his when I watched him throw the ball. I mean, I've been to games, I've seen him put touch on it, but he's different. He throws. Like people say, when you see Aaron Rodgers throw, when you see Mahomes throw, they're different. They just have different arm strength and different touch. And I think Carson Wentz he's in that conversation.
All right. So my guy that I dislike, my number 3. No, I'll do a guy that I like first. So the guy that I like as my number 3 is Emmanuel Sanders. So to me, it is not a question that if Emmanuel Sanders, and he's back at practice, so it is not a question to me that if Emmanuel Sanders is healthy and going, for this team, that he is the number 1 wide receiver for the Broncos, and that's it. You know what I mean? Like I know people are, trying to pump up everybody else there because, they're scared of the Emmanuel Sanders injury, but I'm not. I think Emmanuel Sanders is the most talented wide receiver there. The Achilles injury, made me nervous up until I saw him running routes the other day, and now he's back to practice, and they're saying by next week he should be full practice, which is, that makes him the number 1 guy there, period. So it's very simple. It's as simple as that for me. And the guy that I dislike is Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan is my number 3. We kind of talked about this when we were talking about the Falcons, breakdown. Matt Ryan seems to be an every other year guy. This year, the defense got some of its pieces back, that they were just decimated last year with injuries. So they were just giving up 1 million points to everybody. So, when you're giving up a whole bunch of points to people, you're playing catch up, you're throwing the ball a lot, you're trying to do things to come back into games. I don't think that's going to necessarily be the scenario this year. I do think that they'll have, positive game script where they'll, are going to be using the run game a little more, going to be doing things like that, which are going to take away from Matt Ryan's numbers. And the thing that hurts Matt Ryan every other year is he's an every other year touchdown guy. You know what I mean? One year he'll have 35 touchdowns, the next year he'll have 20. You know what I mean? The year after that, he'll have 37 touchdowns like he did this past year or whatever, and then he'll go down to, 21. So it's the touchdowns that kills Matt Ryan every other year. And if he's not throwing the ball as much, he's not going to be scoring as many touchdowns. And, I think that hurts him.
All right, so I'm going to get into my next couple guys. First, a guy I like, Christian Kirk. Christian Kirk right now is a guy going as the 32nd overall receiver in the 7th round. To me, Christian Kirk has top 20 wide receiver upside without a doubt if this offense clicks the way it's supposed to. It's an offense that can be very efficient. They're expected to run a ton of plays. To me, at this point in everybody's career, he's the most talented receiver on that team. If you watch his footwork, it is really, really special. He's got special footwork, man, I'm telling you. And he has big playability. He can take a screen pass 70 yards he can catch those quick slants, then, take them up the field as well. I think Christian Kirk, to me, if this offense clicks, undoubtedly will be a top 20 receiver. And next guy, the guy I don't like is Nick Chubb. Nick Chubb right now is being drafted in the 2nd round with pick number 8. To me, that is way too much of a risk that for a guy that halfway through the season, as you're heading into your playoff push, could potentially start splitting carries. I don't know if they brought Kareem Hunt on as trade bait. Maybe somebody loses a running back and the trade deadline comes and you want to trade for Kareem Hunt, or I don't think they signed him just to sit on the bench and watch Nick Chubb run all over the field. And to me, if they're trying to, preserve Nick Chubb for the playoffs, because they are expected to be a playoff team in a lot of people's eyes, they could be preserving Nick Chubb. They could bring in Kareem Hunt to get a little bit more of the work. You just don't know what that dynamic is going to be when Kareem Hunt gets back from suspension. And to me, if you're drafting a guy in the 2nd round, I want all assurances that guy's going to be the man. Like, he's going to be either, your strong RB2 or he's your RB1 if you draft a wide receiver in the 1st round. And to me, if your RB1 has potential to split carries halfway through the season, to me, that's just too big of a risk to take. And, to me, I think he's a good player. But like I said, halfway through the season, Kareem Hunt could come in there and they start splitting carries and your playoff, push looks shitty.
Well, Kev, I'm going to piggyback off of the last thing you said and give you my my low guy, and with the piggyback or with the split carries, and the guy that I have that I'm real low on is Philip Lindsay, because this is a guy that even after they signed Theo Riddick, it's a guy who still is not moving from his position, and we know that he's going to be 60-40, 55, 45 with Royce Freeman, and now who knows what kind of work Rigg's going to get. So I don't understand how this guy is still so high on the draft board when he really only shined for a portion of last year. So to me, the value is just it's bananas. It blows my mind how he's not dropping really at all. I checked today even, and he's really still sitting in that same position that he's been in even before they signed Riddick. So not a whole lot to say about him, except that I'm just really he's someone that I would stay far away from. You'll be highly disappointed. You could have got someone much better. I hate the Dallas Cowboys, but I'm going to give a Cowboy, Amari Cooper, as a guy that I'm very high on.
Oh, stop right there. Another debate we got ahead of us.
Beep, 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 beep. We got the Kill Bill music and shit. It's about to go down. We got another debate.
All right, so
yeah, I was going to say you like Amari Cooper.
I just want to give you Kev's point of view and just say that he only had 2 good games, and that'll be it. That's pretty much.
That's so much more. But he got so much.
Well, I mean, you could say that is the facts. I mean, I had this guy on my team. I traded him in our league last year at some point through the season, and those 2 games were huge for me. They won me those games, just him alone. But going into this year, he is pretty high on a lot of people's, his ADP's a lot higher than what a lot of people thought it would be, especially, but I think it is because he's gonna develop chemistry with Dak. And here's the biggest thing now. I wouldn't have picked him if it wasn't for the fact that we don't know what Zeke's gonna do. I think this skyrockets Amari through the roof when it comes to his production. Who else are they going to go to? Who are they? They're going to throw the ball to Witten? Are they going to throw the ball to Old Man? You can jump in, Kevin, if you want. I mean, are they going to throw the ball to Randall Cobb? I mean, I think Randall might see a little bit of work, but seriously, this offense has to run around somebody, and it's going to run around Cooper. They will They will throw the ball in double coverage to him if they have to, because he's a talent. He's the only talented guy that they have. And honestly, is Dallas going to be irrelevant now that if Zeke doesn't play? I know you guys said that they're going to miss the playoffs, and I could see them missing the playoffs, but Dallas is Dallas. They will be relevant, and they will score points, and someone on that team has to have a 1,300, 1,400-yard season and 11 touchdowns, and that will be Amari Cooper.
All right, so let's just start it off by getting the blah stuff out of there. Yes, Amari Cooper only had 2 big games. So he played 9 games with the Dallas Cowboys. The other 7 games combined, he had 56 targets, 35 catches, 328 yards, 1 touchdown, 7 other games. That averages out to be 5 catches on 8 targets for 47 yards, and you're putting your freaking hands together praying he scores a touchdown. To me, this looks a lot like old Amari Cooper, Oakland Raiders Amari Cooper. Like I said before, the 2 big games were just extremely blow-up games, bigger than he had in Oakland. You had the 1 game against Philly where he scored 3 touchdowns, and then you get the Thanksgiving game where he went for $180 and 2 touchdowns. So he had 6 touchdowns. However, the other 5 of them came in them 2 games. The other 1 touchdown was spread out through the rest of the 7 games. He's never been a wide receiver 1. Never been a wide receiver 1. His highest finish was 13 in the year of 2016. And in that same year, Michael Crabtree was wide receiver 10. So he actually finished higher than him. That was also with Derek Carr throwing the ball. To me, Derek Carr is a much better passer than Dak Prescott. Dak Prescott is more of a playmaker. He can get out on bootlegs and, make things happen with his legs. And, that'll open up opportunities for Amari Cooper. But, if you're talking about a strictly a better passer of the ball, I think Derek Carr is strictly a better passer of the ball. So, like I said, he wasn't even the number 1 wide receiver on his own team at that point. And let's take it back to the last time Dak Prescott had a guy who was potentially supposed to be this blow-up number 1 receiver. 2017, Dez Bryant had 132 targets, only completed 69 of them during that time. Dez was drafted as the 8th pick in the 2nd round and finished number 22 overall. In that same year, this is coming off the 2016 year, so this is 2017. Guess who was 1 pick later than Dez Bryant? Amari Cooper. Guess where Amari Cooper finished in that year? 42. This guy has been a bust pretty much his whole career. And we've drafted him. He's had opportunities where we drafted him high, and he's let us down. He's proven to be a bust in the past, and he's going to be a bust this year. That one I won for sure.
Before Zeke, all right. Let me just come back real quick.
Hold on. If you want to bring, I'll save that for my last minute if we have to.
No, well, this because I'm basing it off of Zeke. Because before Zeke, I agree that he is for sure at best he's probably a wide receiver 2. He's probably with Zeke on the field, he's getting 110 to 125 targets. He's probably closer to 125 targets. Without Zeke, where else do they go? Zeke is 60-70% of this offense. What do they do on offense without Zeke? Somebody has to get the ball in their hands. Who is the next most talented player on this team? It's Amari Cooper.
Dan, you see that chair you're sitting in? defenses know the same exact fucking thing you're saying. So they're going to just put every bit of coverage on Amari Cooper. You're not going to be able to get the ball to Amari Cooper because he's going to have two guys on him every time that Dak steps back.
He'll still see 175 targets, and that will equate to 100 plus catches, which is 1,400 yards and 12 touchdowns.
Dude, through 9 games last year, he had 50.
I'm not disagreeing you with his past. His past has not. He has been a bust. There's no doubt he has been a bust.
But I'm talking about last year. I'm talking about last year with Dallas.
I brought up your own facts that he had 2 monster games, and besides that, I had him on my team. I remember all the 50, 60-yard games. But
all right, guys, let me cut you off. So you guys are gonna get your 1 minute, but real quick. I know you think you're winning, Kev, but I'm sorry. I'm looking at these numbers, and I think I'm siding with Dan right now. So you're going to have to make a convincing argument because I'm looking at these numbers, and I know what you're saying, that, you know, with Dallas, he had some good games, some bad games. But when last year he had a game against the Rams, game 1, didn't do shit, 2.8 points, fantasy points. Week 2 against Denver, who was a pretty good pass defense, 21.6 points.
But that's with Oakland. I mean,
I understand, but it was still last year. You're bringing up last year's stats, so I'm just saying the rest of his stats, right?
So Oakland last year, I know. I looked that up as well.
Yeah, so he had two for 17, terrible. Then the next week he had 8 for 128 and 1 touchdown, right? 26.8 fantasy points. Then he had 2 points, and then 2 weeks he didn't play. Then he got traded, didn't play the bye week. Goes to Tennessee, right? 16.8 fantasy points, 13.5 fantasy points, 6.6, 38, 13.6, 49.7, 8.3, 6, and then 6.1. And then in the playoffs, he had 100 yards and a touchdown.
You made my point, though. Like, listen to what you're drafting him in the 3rd round as your wide receiver 1. Those aren't wide receiver 1 numbers. He had 4 games where he was good.
No, he's not being drafted as a number 1. He's being drafted outside the top 12. He's being drafted as number 13 right now. So he's a number 2 wide receiver.
If you're drafting him in the 3rd round, you go running back. He is your wide receiver 1, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah, I mean that's definitely possible that you do that.
You know, you're drafting Amari Cooper. You more than likely have gone running back, and need a wide receiver in that 3rd round, so you go Cooper. And like I said, if he's your wide receiver 1 on your team, he's not a good wide receiver 1 at all.
No, but it's not.
Before he's not 6'3" Deshaun Jackson.
That's exactly what he is. But when you extrapolate the numbers and you look at you add the numbers up, he's possibly going to finish the number 1. He's going to have these blow up games like he does it every year. We all know that he does it every year, and it's the same. You can make the same argument for Brandon Cooks. Brandon Cooks the same way. Brandon Cooks has games where he does absolutely nothing. Then he has a game next week where he does 120 in a touchdown or 2. I mean, like they're basically the same player.
Cooks is a 4th round pick, about a whole round later.
Yeah, but he's not putting up 49 points in a game. I mean, 10 catches for 217 and 3 touchdowns. That's not Brandon Cooks.
Brandon Cooks has been consistently a top 15 player over the last 3 years, though. Amari Cooper has only sniffed that one time.
No, I agree with what you're saying, but if you're using last year's number, that's he had 4 games where he scored over 20 fantasy points. That's a lot. He had 1 game where he fucking doubled that up.
And this year I think he has 8 games where it's over 20 fantasy points because he's going to listen, Kev. This guy, somebody's got to get the ball in this offense, and he's going to see enough targets where there will be 120, 130, 140 catches. That many catches is going to be a monster amount of yards, and he will see touchdowns. You're getting him in round 3. That is about as good of draft production as you're going to get.
If he's your number 2 wide receiver, I'm gonna say that he's a very good number 2.
Well, I mean, if he's 13th overall, then he's a wide receiver too. But there's no doubt he's going to outperform many of the wide receiver 1s this year because he is the only guy. He is the head guy on that team. That team they have to run through somebody, and it's going to be Cooper.
Yeah, I don't know. I think. Oh man.
I'll accept the L.
Ooh.
I'll accept the L. I mean, I totally disagree with the L, but I'll
Well,
accept
I disagreed last time, damn it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think I got to give that one to Dan. I just Amari Cooper with a full year with Dak, a full offseason with Dak Prescott, could have a really big season. And he's right. If Zeke does sit out for whatever 5-6 games, there really is nobody else on that offense, and they are going to move the ball because as much as we say there's nobody else, they're going to run the ball. They're going to throw the ball, intermediately to what's his name, Jason Witten, and I think Gallup is going to have a better season than he did last year.
But the big plays are going to go to Cooper.
They do have weapons.
The big plays will go to Cooper. The big games will go to Cooper. He's. I mean, if Zeke steps out, I mean, even if Zeke plays, I think he's still a decent value. I don't know if he's quite round 3 value. I mean, that's why he probably wouldn't have been. We wouldn't have this conversation right now. But with Zeke sitting out, it's crazy how good he can be in that round 3 spot.
Yeah, and if you look at it, he's basically averaging almost nine targets per game. So if he's getting 9 to 10 targets,
that's going
game,
up to 15 a game probably.
If he's getting 9 to 10 targets a game, he could have a good season. He could definitely have a good season.
All right, you're up, Steve.
All right, so I am going to go over my next 2 guys, and I was actually going to go with no, I'll save that for later. All right, so my 2 guys are Miles Sanders on the good side. I think Miles Sanders, Dan just touched on him. He went to Eagles training camp today. He saw what he looked like. I've been beating the drum for this guy since March. You know what I mean? I love this kid. I think he's the most talented running back in this draft class. And, I just think that everybody else on the Eagles is not as good as him or even close to as good as him. And to me, you don't run RBBC if you have a clear and away better talent. That would be like putting Adrian Peterson in his prime on, the Eagles this year and saying, not obviously Miles is not as good as AP. But when you have a running back that's just so far superior than everybody else on the team, running an RBBC is fucking completely pointless. You're literally you're doing it to do it. You know what I mean? Which is stupid because to me, he's the best pass catcher on the team. Darren Sproles, you could have an argument with that, but Darren Sproles is 800 years old, So none of the other guys are a better pass catcher than him out of the backfield. None of the guys are explosive as him out of the backfield. To me, running an RBBC when you have a much more talented guy makes absolutely no fucking sense. And by week 4, and I wrote it in his player profile, and I haven't changed his player profile for this specific reason, because I do not believe that the Eagles are going to just say, we're running RBBC because that's our philosophy. I think that's just a fucking if they do that just to me that makes Doug Peterson a bad coach because you don't run a scheme because that's your scheme. You run schemes for your players.
Don't you dare talk about Doug P on this damn podcast.
If you run RBBC, yeah, he won a Super Bowl. I'll give you guys that. But if you run an RBBC when you have this kind of talent in the backfield, and you said it yourself, Dan, the other guy on the other side that's making an argument for being the RB1 is fucking fat and slow. You know what I mean?
Dude, he looked really fat. Like he didn't look impressive. I mean, he what he looked like? He looked like they were going to say, Sanders, you go and take us from 20 to 10, and we'll just then give it to Fat Eddie to run the ball in. I mean, that's really what it. That's all. He didn't really have any. He wasn't getting any of the work. Like it was just Carson and Sanders just boom, 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 plugging the ball away. I saw a little bit of Sproles in there, but he didn't get a whole lot of touches. But I mean, this guy's going to see the field a lot. They're not
exactly. So that's my guy that I like, and the guy that I don't like is, can anybody guess? Darrell Henderson. I have been also talking about this guy. I don't see what everybody else sees. I've watched a lot of his fucking NFL, his college tape, and I saw a guy who was very fast. You know what I mean? When he gets to the outside, he's going to outrun you, and I have no doubt about that. But I also saw a guy who doesn't make cuts that NFL running backs need to make. And if you can't make those cuts, then you can't play. You know what I mean? He also is not a great blocker in the backfield. So, they have him as basically the scat back is what they're saying. They're saying they're going to use him as a fucking Chris Thompson. Like, is that the guy that you think is going to take away touches from Todd Gurley? Like, no. Hell no. Come on, guys. Use common sense here. You know what I mean? Todd Gurley, if he plays all 16, is going to get at least 75% of the touches. To me, it's not even a question. If they use this guy as a scat back, Brown, we saw what Brown did last year. Brown got maybe 2 or 3 touches a game. It's not like he was even being used. And I do think that Todd Gurley is going to get some of his work brought back, which is why I'm saying 75%. If Todd Gurley shows that he can stay healthy, and he's healthy all year, he's going to dominate touches in this backfield, and I don't give a shit about Darrell Henderson, and you guys are fucking taking him in the 7th round, and it's a mistake.
Let him know. All right, so next guy I like, I've been preaching him all season long, as Delanie Walker. To me, I have Delanie Walker ranked as my 6th tight end overall, and he's currently being drafted as the 13th tight end in the 12th round. To me, the guy has been a top 6 tight end for the past 4 years, or the previous 4 years before last year. Last year he tore the ACL in the first game, but before that he was a top 6 tight end the previous 4 years. He had way over 100 targets all 4 of those years. And he's just basically been a consistent target for Marcus Mariota, who, he's in that year where they got to see what they have. And, to me, he knows that. And I think he's going to go to his old reliable guy a little bit more than people think, obviously, because, he wouldn't be going in the 12th round if not. So, yeah, I like Delanie Walker. And a guy that I am not so high on this year is DJ Moore. DJ Moore right now in PPR leagues is going with the 9th pick in the 5th round. To me, we talked about Curtis Samuel. Right now, Curtis Samuel is going with the 7th pick in the 9th round. I think you need to literally balance those two out. Both of them should kind of be 7th round picks, because it's kind of like a Dante Pettis thing to me. Like, you really don't know what you have in these guys. Even DJ Moore, he showed extreme upside in a couple games last year, but Curtis Samuel, when he was on the field, outperformed him. So to me, I'm not drafting DJ Moore in the 5th round, which is where he's going. I'm way more likely to draft Curtis Samuel, who's on his team, in the 9th round. And like I said, I think the ADPs kind of need to balance out. Both of those guys need to drop down to the 7th round until we see what we have.
All right. That was your last 2 guys, right, Kev?
No, I got 2 more.
Oh, okay. I guess we started with me. Yep, my last 2. We'll start with the guy that I'm highest on. And it's a guy that just keeps on growing more and more interest in my brain. And the more I look at him, the more I look at his team, and the more I like him. And that's Kerryon Johnson. And I think this guy is just due for an incredible season, an incredible career. Everything out. I mean, we've talked about him a lot over the last couple of podcasts, and everything out of Detroit is that he's going to be the every down back. I mean, with little tiny spells here and there, he's going to be the every down back. And where he's being drafted, the production that he's going to put up is going to be it's there's guys that you're shaky on, and then there's guys that you just know are going to produce. And he's one of those guys where you just look at what he's done last year, and you look at going forward, his talent. He still has Stafford there, who Stafford's always going to move the ball. He's been doing it for 10 years. I'm really high on Kerryon Johnson. I'm excited to watch him play. I think next year, he has such a good year that next year he's a top 1st or 2nd rounder. Then the guy that I am not high on, haven't been high on, I just kind of didn't really speak about him too much. I just more wait and see with him in the early going. But now with his hamstring injuries, Damian Williams. There's no one really, aside from last year when he took over that role when Kareem Hunt left the league, got suspended. He showed promise, but he's been in the league for a little while. I looked at a lot of his stats. I looked at some of his tape, and he's definitely got ability, but he's been bitten by the injury bug, and now he's back to the injury bug. I mean, he's got a guy, Carlos Hyde, who has proven to be a starting running back, waiting in the wings, waiting to grab that role if it comes down to him. So, I mean, he's still being drafted high. I don't know where he's going to land come mid-August. I guess the leg injury, the hamstring is going to tell a lot about where he falls to, or if if he is out there and they say he's good to go week 1, he might not fall at all. But to me, I'm staying away from him. There's other guys that I would much rather have. I think for Damian Williams, I think he reminds me a lot of the James Conner, where he is being drafted high because he's a product of his team. James Conner, we all agree that he's being drafted because he's a product of an incredible offensive line. I think Damian Williams is being drafted high because he's a product of an incredible offense overall. So, I mean, that's kind of why I picked. He's being drafted super high. Patrick Mahomes is going in the 3rd round. That's ridiculous for a quarterback, in my opinion. I mean, some people want a they stick to a guideline of making sure their roster fills up. They don't have any kind of strategy like we have. But I think there's going to be some standout stars on that Kansas City team. And I think Tyreek Hill and Kelsey are going to be those 2 stars. And these other guys are just being drafted too high for me.
Boom. All right, so you want me to go?
Yeah, go ahead. I only got one guy because I already did Cooper. So.
All right. So my 2 guys are. I'm gonna start with Todd Gurley. So Todd Gurley is my number 1 guy that I like. Obviously, he is a risk, and I understand that he is a risk, but to me, the risk is so worth the reward because Todd Gurley has top 3 running back upside, and you are getting him in. He's going in the late round 2. He's going, I think, 2-9. That's crazy. You know what I mean? To me, if Todd Gurley gets back to anything like he looked last year, which I don't think he lost anything. You know what I mean? He had pain. He has arthritis in his knee. It is 100% common that when you have an ACL tear that you get some arthritis. You know what I mean? He's 24 fucking years old. Like, we're acting like this dude is 32 fucking years old and getting ready to leave the league. Like, this is going to be one of those things. Watch. In 6 weeks, this is going to be one of those things that everybody's like, yo, do you remember all that shit they were talking about? Fucking with Todd Gurley having a fucked up knee. And then you're going to be like, yeah, I remember that shit. And then your boy's going to be like, yo, this motherfucker's tearing it up. He's got like more touchdowns than anybody in the league. And you're going to be like, I know, I didn't draft him, bro. I let him go. I just didn't draft him. And then fucking everybody's going to be like, I hate all the fucking fantasy analysts who told me not to draft this motherfucker because, you know what I mean? I could have got this motherfucker in the early 2nd round and I let him go all the way to the, you know what I mean, the end of the 2nd. And my boy is now dominating the league because now he has fucking Ezekiel Elliott and Todd Gurley on his team and he's just smashing us. You know what I mean? Like, this happened. And I'll give you a perfect example. 3 years ago, I had David Johnson and Le'Veon Bell, right? I got him. I was the 12th pick in a league. I got him 12th pick, 13th. So I would on the turn. Took both of them. Dominated that league. Kicked everyone's fucking ass because Le'Veon Bell was suspended for 3 weeks and David Johnson was basically coming off his rookie season that everybody was like, oh yeah, he's good. He should be good, but we don't know. Fuck that. I saw potential in him and I took those 2 guys and guess what? I dominated my league. I'm letting you know, if you get Zeke because of his, bullshit holdout and then you come around in the 2nd round at 2-9 and take Todd Gurley, you could possibly have the 1-3 running back in the whole fucking league and dominate your league and win. Boom. Period. Worth the risk. 100% take it. Okay. So, my last guy, I just talked about him, and it kills me to say it, but Le'Veon Bell is my number 1 disappointing player of this season, and it is because he's a first rounder. I wish that he would drop just a little bit into the 2nd round because I don't think he's going to be a complete bust. I do think he's going to have an okay season. I do not think he's going to be a top 8 fantasy running back. I think just that offensive line is complete shit. They didn't really do anything to make that line better. I mean, they took a Kelechi Osemele from the Oakland Raiders, who had his worst year, as a guard in the NFL last year. I said this, and if you guys go to 4thandinchesff.com, you'll see, on the cheat codes, sign up, do our VIP access. You will see on the cheat codes, I talk about the Raiders offensive line and how Kelechi Osemele played his worst season last year. He was just not a good guard last year. And I don't know if that had to do something with, John Gruden or, what the case may be, but he was not good last year. So they didn't do anything to upgrade this line. So he has a shitty offensive line. He has a second-year quarterback with really not that many weapons to throw to. You know what I mean? I know people are talking about Jamison Crowder, who's always fucking hurt. You know what I mean? They're talking about, basically all the wide receivers on the team, and nobody on that team is actually really any good. You know what I mean? That I would say is like, oh my God, this guy is going to, open it up for Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is going to be the main focus for every NFL defense. They're going to 100% try to take him away because they're not scared of anybody else. You know what I mean? And if that happens, he's not going to finish in the top 8 guys. And he's being drafted as like the number 7 running back in fantasy football right now. And it's just, to me, that's, it's super scary. So, if I could get him in the second round, I would definitely be happy with that. But take him in the first round, makes me super nervous.
All right. So, I already talked about Cooper when we did our debate. That was our 5th guy. That would have been my 5th guy I don't like. I probably should have saved DJ Moore till this round. I wish I kind of counted down like you did, Steve, so that the it wasn't – you kind of made it more dramatic for me to finish this way. But I'll go with Devin Singletary as the last guy I like. Right now, Devin Singletary is a guy being drafted in the 12th round. He's already working with the first team in Buffalo. I like that, Josh Allen has a little bit of mobility that obviously opens it up for running backs. To me, I think, we kind of know Shady is coming towards the end of his career. It wouldn't be a surprise if he was cut or traded. And if he does play, there's a possibility that Shady will be hurt really quick because Shady always gets hurt. So, to me, Devin Singletary going in the 12th round could wind up being a running back that takes that job eventually. And, those are the type of players that could potentially win you your fantasy league when you're drafting guys in the 12th round to take over the job. He's also 3-down type of back. He can catch the ball out of the backfield as well. So, if they decide to use Frank Gore, Devin Singletary will get some runs and he will see some work in the he will see the work in the passing game if Shady's not there. To me, Devin Singletary is the guy that, like I said, I think down the road could help people win fantasy championships because come that time, I think he will be the starter on the Buffalo Bills. And I love his talent. I watched a lot of film on him and he's very shifty. And, he kind of reminds me a little bit of Shady. So, like I said, I think Devin Singletary is a guy coming out at the end of the season can help teams win fantasy championships. Anybody else?
That is
it for tonight's podcast. Don't forget to check out the website at www.fourthandinchesff.com. That is www.4thandinchesff.com for a bunch of content. We got our blogs, our player profiles, our articles, and you can subscribe to our draft guide. And Steve, you have an announcement.
Yes. All right. So, guys, the listener leagues are looking for invites. So if you guys want, when I post this podcast, there will be the links to join the listener leagues on the podcast. So when you click on the bottom, you'll see 3 different leagues. I'll give you descriptions for all 3 of the leagues. One is a IDP league. It was Dynasty. We're actually going to take the Dynasty away because, I think it just prolongs it. But we'll just do a Dynasty league, a regular IDP league. Then we're going to do a 12-team Dynasty league. And we're also going to do a 12-team redraft league. All 3 are PPR. So, you don't have to worry about trying to figure out what the different scorings are and all that. It's all, I'll explain the scoring to you guys as you guys join. But it's first come, first serve. As soon as they fill up, we're going to open up more leagues. So that's something that we all can play. You can play against us and see if you see how well you fare.
Nice.
All right. So there you have it, guys. Leave comments and leave feedback for us. And if you want to hit join them leagues, click on those links and join in. And until next time, peace out, guys.
See you guys later, listeners.
Peace.